A gyroscope is a simple machine that has an axis with a closed wheel in the center that spins to produce centrifugal force that causes the machine to stand as if the law of gravity does not apply. This force is hard to move or manipulate as it creates a field of resistance. It is in this force that I have discovered equality within the synapses of the human mind, willpower. We are always revolving around the truth. We are always running in the direction of good faith. We are an unbreakable and unmovable unity and will, and we are bound by the laws of the will of the people. This is why I believe it would make the perfect symbol for freedom. But freedom is not always free, and the nation requires a monetary system in order to be competitive in the world. But this money must be designed for this new nation with the intent to be viewed as what it is, as an idol. The paper money and coinage system adopted by this new nation needs to be faceless, and this currency must be void of the images of political figures. The founding fathers of America were great and honest people. They built the American empire with good intent, but painting their images on paper and using them as idols to somewhat sully their purpose in history make these innocent men corrupted to no fault of their own. Years ago in America, money was backed by gold or silver. Now it is open to nothing more than monopoly money, making it corruptible through inflation and exploitation. The currency of this new nation must be etched in mineral assets, gold, silver, platinum, and other metal or mineral assets, and paper money must be tied to and protected by those materials. The central bank of this nation should be open to all citizens, but be used sparingly. User citizens' bank accounts should not exceed a limit to allocate funding for any project that may arise to the needs of the individual citizen. For example, to take note, the person that makes a sum of money needs to keep a fraction of the portion he makes on hand. If but one leader exists in this nation, he must work and labor as another citizen to reduce the need to burden the system with needless taxes, and only a fair tax state may be used at any given time if thus is needed. And this fund will be allocated to projects approved by the population in a local-only vote. Limited bank accounts applied for by citizens that have a cap limit are primarily for financing and emergency purposes. For instance, one account may be solely dedicated to the owner's home, while another account may fund home improvement, vehicle ownership or maintenance, field costs, groceries, retirement plans, and natural emergencies, and any other need to the individual. This method will be used to prevent greed and wasteful spending otherwise spent by the government as taxes, which should be halted by the Free National Congress. But however, not all corruption could be stopped initially by changing the financial system. For this there needs to be preconditioning imminent laws to prevent certain corruptions that may come about in this new national system. The Constitution should be read as if it were written in crystal carbon, with the manifestation of imminent laws implemented to ensure that the declaration of our Constitution cannot be eroded away by progressives or Fabian socialists. Some will argue that the Constitution requires no protection from another law because it is already the top law of America. But as witness, this law can be interpreted in any manner a person wishes, and thus can argue against them, such as the World War era presidents of American history. And thus, if this implement is not created as a proprietor of the Constitution, it will yet again be left open. And Fringism has a very fine line between anarchy, so if this idea fails, it will be an absolute disaster that will never be able to be repaired. During the 2008 election, a criminal organization under the title of Acorn gave one individual voter registration 73 times, which is a clear example as of why the system of protection absolutely must protect the American voter from fraudulent misuse of the voting system. Many of these fraudulent voters have stolen identities, some from people who have died, and some from people who weren't even legally in the country from the narcotic chaos state of Mexico. To fix this major exploit into the dignity of American individuality, this eminent law that is to be the guardian of the Constitution will protect the public from abuse with a closed-circuit identity to every legal individual and make sure that leaked and personal information cannot be used in abusive ways and prosecute thus such abuses when exacted with criminal intent. Other than that, everything else remains untouched and is as it's supposed to be. If for some day in the future under the banner of fringism, their leader will come to them with an idea and tell them that the world will fundamentally transform, we will refuse. But in the past of many nations, this action was not successful without latter bloodshed, usually by the militarized guard of that leadership. And therefore this nation's military must be only loyal to the people first, the Constitution second, and the leadership arm last. Any call from a leader to turn an armed force against the people of his own nation is worthy of ousting and prosecution under the act of genocide. And to ensure that the military and the civilian population are in cooperation, the military and the civilian population must be one and the same. It would put the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms on a new level, as any man, woman, capable, and willing, and fit to a degree, the absolute chance to serve and protect his or her country. If this level of trust can be achieved, then there should be no fear of retribution by an armed man to help them in times of crisis and war. As for the police, the role stays the same as if there were in today's country. When the presence of a squad of men is needed to serve individual counties or townships, law-abiding citizens may participate in the war against crime in the community, and they apply by the rule of law as written the same thus today. To best understand the way that fringism works is to consider what would you do to change or improve your country, or do you not agree with it but have no say over it? Thus, when given a chance to vote against the new documentation, you have not only a right but a moral obligation to oppose the new documentation, such as a law, bill, proposition. To put a bill to the test, the nation will vote to pass or not pass the bill. Once the votes have been tallied, if the bill has not passed the approval across the country as opposed to a particular state, the state will have a 365-day trial period to see what the bill will do for the state. After that period, there will be a re-validation vote across the country if the bill has been successful in the trial state. If not, the state is to repeal the bill and repay any losses occurred to the citizens during that time period. If the rule for voting for a government official is replaced by voting for a law under the same guidelines, then there absolutely has to be a system in place to keep the system from being exploited through the methods of fraud. A person's personal identity should be held to a sacred level, and no one outside the system should be given an allowance to invade on the system, nor should a group of individuals extort or hinder a person's free will at a place of voting such as the Black Panthers in Philadelphia. To keep people safe and to create a system that is more secure to its citizens, the idea of a closed-circuit identity system might be implemented. This system is one card that has all the information written in a magnetic strip on the top of the card. This information, once written into the card, will have a photo ID and a fingerprint, and the information will only be accessible from the card, which may contain only non-monetary status and can be used to replace large amounts of other identification devices, such as ID cards, SS cards, driver's license, valid hunting or fishing licenses, at level of education, voter registration, diplomatic status, health information, and service status. Like the United States, the new nation will have to deal with the growing problem of the illegal entry of foreigners, especially that of the state of Mexico. Major cartel insurrections in Mexico have driven thousands of immigrant refugees away from the murders and violence that have spilled into the southern border states of Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and California on an all-day, everyday basis. Most of these alien refugees have no intent of harming anyone in their country. With the desperation of poverty and the fear that they might be deported if something wrong happens, and an ever-present smuggling of drugs, human cash, and weapons across the border and back, gives a time-tested preview of just how much work needs to be done in order to solve the madness that makes middle Americans feel less secure at night. One way to solve the immigration crisis would be to grant immigrants entering the nation a 5-year probation period until the immigrant can be classed as an immigrant citizen of the state. While the probation period is in effect, if any standing law has been infractioned, the person must be deported back to his country of origin. But after the 5 years, if the immigrant has abided by the law and is now an immigrant citizen of the state, he will be granted the right to vote and the right to work, and if an infraction occurs after the 5-year period, the judicial system of the state will be responsible for the indictment handling. If all the goals of fringism can be met and maintained, if a new world currency and a bank can be established, if the Constitution can be restored, maintained, and protected, if a military can be for the people, by the people, and of the people, and if the people can vote to what they believe is the right path for the nation's future, and know that their one vote will not be overwritten, overpassed, or undervalued, and there is a safe and moral way to deal with the doors to our land that have been opened to anyone with any intent. If all of these accomplishments may be met, that there will once again be a nation of cautiously generous, poverty-envious individuals to open their minds to those who are then secluded in loneliness, and people may learn side by side, and may there be no regret when someone comes up short on their honest ideas and opinions.